Day tribute for a special sailor.
Yeah, a letter written by a young man aboard the USS Arizona days before the bombing of Pearl Harbor was hand-carried to Hawaii from Illinois and donated to the National Memorial by his family.
Our Ashley Nagaoka reports from Pearl Harbor.
Vicki Borland's great-uncle was killed on board the USS Arizona when the Japanese launched a surprise attack on December 7, 1941. After learning her son's Illinois high school band would be performing here on Memorial Day, Vicki decided it was the perfect opportunity to honor her late uncle.
He was a farm boy from Marceline, Missouri. That's what the letter talks about, is that he misses Missouri snow and that it's hot here. Everybody thinks it's cold when it's 70 degrees.
Orville Lester Rusher was a 21-year-old engineer on board the USS Arizona. He mailed this letter to his sister Helen, Borland's grandmother, on November 25, 1941. His family didn't receive the letter until December 8th, a day after the attack on Pearl Harbor. Rusher's remains were never recovered.
He wanted to come home. He had been discharged, so he was just waiting for his papers to come home. We've had a letter from my granny for a very long time, and I decided that we needed to give it to somebody who could take care of it.
After several numbers from the band, Borland and her son Max presented the letter to the National Park Service. Officials say historical documents like these give people a glimpse into the past.
What's remarkable about the letter is that it is somewhat unremarkable in its tone. He's talking about the things that any young sailor here would experience, kind of a calm before the storm, not realizing what's going to come down in the future in just a matter of days.
The Borlands also presented a wreath in honor of Rusher and those who made the ultimate sacrifice for their country. While they never had the chance to meet him, they say they feel close to him just by being here.
I could never imagine what he went through and what that experience is, but just to be here is crazy.
It really means a lot more to be here and to see that his remains are, still on the ship.
Ashley Nagaoka, Hawaii News Now.
It is a special day.
President Franklin Roosevelt called the attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. And on that date, thousands of service members lost their lives. KITV4's Maleko McDonald today met up with a family visiting from Illinois who found a rare and valuable piece of World War II history in their garage.
Visitors to Pearl Harbor National Memorial were greeted by music this morning. The Triad High School Band traveled from St. Louis, Illinois to perform on this Memorial Day, and Max Borland, a percussionist with the band, along with his mother, presented a wreath. And they brought something else with them, too. While doing research on an American history school project, Max searched his nanny's garage and found a letter written by his great-great-uncle. The letter, which is still surprisingly in near-perfect condition, opens a window to a sailor's life in Hawaii at a time of peace before war.
We kept him for a while. I did a 8th grade project on him, and I think we just recently decided to give him, because we live in the Midwest and there's tornadoes. We wanted to be safe.
The letter is dated November 25th, 1941. Machinist's mate First Class Orville Lester Rusher was stationed on board the USS Arizona, and he writes he'd been discharged and was awaiting his paperwork before he could come home. The casual communication sent to Rusher's sister was written on USS Arizona letterhead, complete with a picture of the ship. Rusher, in seemingly good spirits, writes about girls back home wanting to get married and the relatively warm 70-degree weather in Hawaii.
2,343.
The letter arrived on December 8, 1941, one day after Rusher died in the attack on Pearl Harbor. His remains are still on board the sunken ship, and today the Borlands are visiting the USS Arizona for the first time.
It was rough. This morning I just went out and stood there and just looked. Yeah, I I don't know, probably on the boat it'll hit me a lot harder, the fact that they're all still there.
Borland says she hopes the letter will spark a curiosity to learn about American history and the sacrifices made.
Real people went through these things, and all they had to communicate was a letter that would arrive 2 weeks later, you know? They didn't know. They didn't know what had happened to their loved one. She didn't know that he had died.
The letter will be stored here in the archives at Pearl Harbor Memorial, a valuable memory that will be scanned and preserved so that history will not be forgotten. Maleka McDonald, KITV4 Island News.
Some powerful stuff.